Hey there, New Ager. Don't even bother putting socks on today because I'm going to tell a story that's going to rock them right off. So come enjoy this crossover episode entitled, Now for Something Completely Different. This is a story about God. It's about chickens. And it's about me. But this is a story about God that I've been meaning to tell for some time. So we first got our chickens, 6 girls, in the fall of 2021. And I have been a Christian since 2019. I had an encounter with God. Born again Christian. And I've been on a journey of faith ever since. Shy Shy is not in this story at all. This story is not about Shy Shy at all, believe it or not. So it's our first summer, 2022. It's May. And I go out and I see that there's this bloody egg. I'm like, oh God. And I'm so new at this. I go in and I see one of my chickens has a vent prolapse, okay? She's got, her butt is hanging out of her butt and there's blood. And of course, I'm in a complete panic. I bring her inside the house. And I'm like, all right, so I go to, YouTube University or the internet school of chicken doctoring and learn everything I can about this. And I'm praying. And I get her cleaned up. I get her vent back in. I get her butt back in her butt in about a week and get her back out to the coop. And I'm doing all this kind of praying. But during the time that she was with us and we're doing this treatment and dealing with her issue, I was very, very upset. Like, I just had that sinking feeling all over in my guts and in my stomach. And I was just feeling worried. I was feeling a heaviness and a weight on my life that should not be there. At some point, I stopped and said to myself, what is all this that I'm feeling? This, like, you believe in God, right? The Bible teaches us to be anxious for nothing. So how am I having faith in God yet carrying all this weight and heaviness over my chicken? That's not right. Something's wrong here. Shortly after that, I was sitting around watching YouTube. I like to watch these testimonies. And I'm watching this one, and it's about 40 minutes long, and it's okay. Like, it's not the most gripping story, but I'm advancing it a little bit. And I land near the end, and she says, he watches over the sparrow, and he's watching over you. Well, the chicken's name is Sparrow. And that was one of those moments, I took a deep breath and felt that in my heart, felt that in my gut, felt that was a call from God, like, yeah, I'm with you. And no, you shouldn't be upset and worried and afraid. Well, we resolved the issue and she was back in her coop. This girl prolapsed again in the fall. The whole thing happened all over again. Now, this isn't a video about how I treated her, so I'll do that another time. But went through the whole thing all over again. And again, the same thing. I'm feeling upset. I'm feeling, very concerned. But maybe not as much. In the meantime, while we're still doing this treatment, which takes like a week to deal with, I'm reading this book by Pastor Hagee Ministries. And there it is. There it is again. He says, his eye is on the sparrow and he watches over you. Here, like right here. I said it again. He did it again. Look at that. He did it again. But wouldn't you know it, Christmas Day. Now, I read the Psalms in the morning. And here's the verse I open up to, this one. And it says, I am as a sparrow on a rooftop. Go out, check on my girls, and what do you know? There it is again. The third time. For the third time. This time, I laughed in that way when it's all you can do. But I didn't have that gripping panic. Brought her in. But this time she had this vent gleat. That's a whole nother part of this. It's basically a yeast infection, and it's gross, and it wasn't stopping. I eventually found out that it was the food. Like, the food I was giving them was causing this to happen. Processed foods, I found anything with processed foods was causing this. And I know because once I switched it, it stopped happening. So I switched her food. She cleared up, brought her back out. All is well with the world. I did a video about the loss of our 2 girls, and that was a tribute to them. And in almost 3 years now, these were the only 2 that we lost. So I did a whole tribute to them, if you wanted to go see it. The food I ended up giving them, while it was natural, it was not giving them the nutrients they need. So we ran into a whole bunch of problems. So I'm not really going to get into like what exactly happened with Hawk or with Chicken, but with what God did. Because in that video, I said that God made himself known to me in those instances of loss. And here's that story. In August, I come out and find that my girl Hawk was gone. So this was my first loss. 2 full years, okay, with these girls. And that's my blessing of God, number 1. A sweet blessing of God. I was really in pain. Like, this hurt more than any other animal I ever had. So listen, I don't know, think what you want, but we buried her in the backyard. And so I decided that night that I was going to go out there and call her forth like Jesus did to Lazarus. Hawk, come forth. And I tried like really believing it. Anyway, that was that. I did not resurrect the chicken. But that Sunday in church, now listen, it was a week later, I'm in church and I'm hurt. The man comes up to speak and he's talking about the Lazarus moment or the Lazarus season in your life where it's like, why, God? You know, when they're lamenting the death of Lazarus, they're like, Jesus, you could have stopped this. Goes into a story. So first of all, so he's talking about the Lazarus moment when I just pulled the Lazarus thing on the chicken. So I'm like, okay, I'm listening up because this is for me. All right. God's talking to me right now about this, about Hawk. He tells a story about how he felt so guilty that he was not there, present, when someone he loved passed away. Which, by the way, when Hawk died, me and my husband were away for 1 night. And it was like the first time in, oh my God, in 2 years, I think we went away twice. And this was just an overnight to a wedding. And then she was gone. So he's talking about how he was guilty, how he felt guilty he wasn't there to be there for somebody. And that he had to forgive himself. And he said, at that moment, he felt as though a sparrow had landed on his shoulder. I cried so hard, other people were bringing me tissues. So, I don't know if you hear what I'm saying, but that was God putting his hand on my shoulder. So it was a month later that I had chicken, my darling chicken. So it was a Sunday, I come home, she's like, okay, something's very wrong, she's wobbling, I bring her inside. The next morning, Monday morning, again, I open up the Psalms, and here's what I open up to. The sparrow has found her house, and the swallow her home. It's something like that. She died 2 days later in my arms. And that was a wrecked day because she died. I had an appointment with her for the vet, and my husband was working in the area. He got into a car accident. He was okay, like he got T-boned, everyone was all right, but he got on the phone with me to come get him. That he would meet me, or I would come get him because I was going to be in that area. And I had to tell him, no, actually I'm not. For him, like, I didn't want to say it right then and there, but I was like, I'm not coming. And so this poor guy, because he loved them too, loves them too, loved chicken too. Chicken was his favorite. And amazingly, our neighbor was in that area right there, right then, to come get him. So once again, he spoke to me with the symbol of the sparrow. This came up on my Facebook that day, and I knew it was for me. Now, as this story is unfolding over these years, and I'm telling people this story as it goes on, I'm wondering, so God, what's the climax or the end, like, how we wrap up this testimony? Because you don't know that I've been going through my own medical issue for a long time. I'm physically okay, mostly. That's another story completely. And if you want to talk about being upset or frightened or, not trusting God with your whole being, well, that's something I've been dealing with a lot. So much so that in 2022, I really had to start going hard after my faith and really going after my faith hard. Well, not long after the girls were gone and I was still grieving deeply, one of our members at the church went up and gave a message of faith and believing on Jesus. He told a story about how his daughter fell downstairs and was calling after Jesus, and he healed her. And in that message, he said, "Aren't you of more value than many sparrows? Because you are of more value than many sparrows." I said, "Oh, wow, God. Well, that's one way. That's one way to tie off this testimony." So let's just say that most recently, the doctors were impressed with my latest workup. I'll be going back into some testing and all that soon, this summer. We'll see what happens. So that's my beautiful story about the sparrow and the chicken and me and God. And God is watching us, and he cares for every single sparrow. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a farthing? Not one of them will fall to the ground without the Father. And every hair on your head is numbered. Fear not, for you are of more value than many sparrows. So I know God has my life in his hands. My faith has grown. That's the story. May it be an encouragement to you. My fear is diminishing and my fear is fleeing. May the Lord bless you and keep you. Till next time, guys. 42 hours later.